The time is short, let me get started. I think just latching on to what Hans was saying, the most important for this meeting today is that empirical data is very difficult. The moment we look into the future, it's a different perspective than looking into the past. So don't look for ideas to confirm your thinking, rather look for trends that will disrupt your thinking. Now, who would have thought that the washing machine in its invention, when it happened, had a bigger impact than the internet had, right? I don't know whether you know all of this. So a study was done. What has the biggest impact, the washing machine or the internet? Clearly the washing machine, because it allowed 50% of the workforce to enter the workforce, whereas in the past they were stuck at home, right? So who would have thought that back then? So I think what my focus today is less on the commercial application. I'll focus on that, but more on the developmental side. I think as a passionate South African, the question is always how do we pull in the other 70-80% of our population that lives in poverty, right? This is the issue. And how do we use industrial technologies and Industry 4.0 for that purpose? So a lot has been said, I'm sure, about the first three industrial revolutions, but the one I want you to focus on was the second one, which is where capitalism, the systems thinking and consolidation happened, economy of scale. That's the one that is still with us very much today. The world has not changed since then. And of course, we have the cyber-physical system, and these digital changes will occur for industry and society. But the second revolution has a lasting impact on industrial development, right? And I think the hypothesis I want to test with you today or show you today is that unless we change the fundamental challenges we almost received with the second one, we will have a challenge in terms of dealing with the fourth industrial revolution. So let's look at and unpack this a little bit. So fantastic pictures, isn't it? So large-scale steel, agriculture, textile. This is now the second. Large-scale factories focus on economy of scale, large-scale electricity and oil, advances in transportation, separation of labor. Now, before the second industrial revolution, we had a direct relationship between the supplier and the buyer. We had craftsmanship. We had capital, although limited, spread across society. We had large-scale capital not as a critical requirement for business growth, because if you wanted to be a saddle maker, all you needed were the tools to be a saddle maker. You had localized production, supply of goods and services. Now, after the second industrial revolution, what happened was we had value chains that were dominated by large organizations. Because, of course, in order to do large-scale stuff, you needed capital, clearly. We had production driven by high volumes and low cost. Ford was mentioned. Here it is, Hans. And we had the start of real capitalism, the capital class owning the majority of assets and wealth. And we had large-scale capital needed for large-scale business. And finally, globalization of supply and demand. Fantastic, isn't it? The problem is that this led to a number of problems which we have today, and I'll focus on those shortly. Now, in this new age of disruption, where we have technologies that are coming, and of course all these phenomena ranging from decline fertility rates, hopefully in the future sometime, merging middle class, urbanization, etc. The question is, how do we manage industrial development in an age of disruption? How do the policymakers decide on changing society? How does the commercial environment, how does the market change things? How does society change is the issue. So if we look at the key drivers at the moment, ranging from the population growing to digital unemployment, wealth and age disparity, Cold War 2.0, and all these wonderful things, there are massive change drivers which are occurring, partially because of technology or partially as a result of technology. But one thing's for sure, at least in my opinion, is that we have to review the fundamentals of the second industrial revolution. The first one is, and this is sort of the notion that we have in terms of the design principles of our existing world, expanded globalization, although flawed, is the only way for growing future prosperity. First one. The second one, large global companies are the key to getting things done and raising huge capital requirements, because in order to do big things you need lots of money, and therefore you need to be big. The next one is, well, fighting climate change is okay, but it's not critical yet. Right? It's one of those things. Profit maximization always trumps sustainability. And wealth disparity is one of those unavoidable byproducts of our times. And protectionism is always bad. And by the way, if we just add technology, everything will come right. Isn't it? Fine. So we don't have to fix the flaws of our society. And technology is just an add-on. And clearly this is the problem. So our system is not working. It's as simple as that, right? So if you are part of the these ones here, by the way, this is the American graph in terms of income growth generation from 1980 to 2014. What you see clearly is the poor were owning this amount in 1980, and this is where they are today. The wealthy were here, and where are they now? Here. It's a simple, the wealth difference between the rich and poor is, and this is America, by the way, right? It's just growing. Now add technology and add the access to technology with it. It's an environment, it's a society that becomes unsustainable. It's as simple as that, even if we have the greatest technology. So the point is we need to use technology in a way which makes our society probably a more sustainable place. Now, Industry 4.0, of course, is a wonderful toolbox to achieve this. So if we go through the fundamentals of what it allows us to network for people, machines, and systems to communicate and interact anywhere. It deals with the digitization of physical systems, always for massive elimination of waste and efficiency. It connects parties in terms of distance, time, trust, and interoperability. It supports innovation, collaboration, and it has a number of things that help us with our human and societal challenges. So it really is a great thing. And I think, therefore, one needs to separate the two key focus areas of Industry 4.0 technology. The first one being one that is dictated by market forces, and I think Hans explained this very well, which is where industry drives the process and regulations, industry policy monitors, enables, and restricts as needed. The next one is, I think, a very important one, and I hope the CSIR government has a very important role to play in this regard. And this is where there has to be a collaboration and coordination between the state and other parties in terms of technologies evolving, the active pursuit of opportunities, and the maturing of opportunities, of technologies in order to achieve certain goals. Let's start with the first one. Right, so the first one is, so Hans was talking about finding it difficult. I think it actually, I think it's going to take off significantly, and I think the technologies are there. It's probably just, how people deploy them. I don't think it's that difficult to do, because what's going to happen is we're going to have one dimension, which is the machine to machine, the Internet of Things, and the Internet of Everything. This is what you were showing in terms of the sort of almost catalytic effect of things being connected. On the one side, we have all sorts of technologies, whatever they are, and by the way, there are others that are coming. And what we are seeing at the moment is that there are two areas of beneficiation. If you take all the noise and everything out, basically we have smart connected products and smart connected enterprises or processes. So this is a smart home, a smart city, a vehicle. This is a smart supply chain management and so on. So it's very much the picture you drew in the last slide. So this is what the strategy of any commercial environment would be, is to leverage the network, to use the technology and achieve a goal and increase profits and customer satisfaction, etc. Now, how the process works, and I think, as I said, if you take any strategy that's happening and you overlay this, there would be a 90% fit. So you have, first of all, establishing a digital twin. So you take data, you link it in, you create a physical replica of this world. Then you analyze this data, you visualize it, and you action upon that data. The third step is you optimize the dynamic man-machine system interface. Basically, how do I use this data in a productive way? And then finally, you add technologies as they are needed. So the notion here is that the Industry 4.0 is driven by things. Things are connected. The more they are connected, the more value they can add, the less waste there is, etc. And technology support essentially this process. That's in a nutshell the principle. To do this can be done relatively quickly. It's not rocket science. The solutions are there. And we did an exercise recently where we connected all these things in 10 days with augmented reality and AI and so on. So it's not difficult to do. I mean, to apply it, yes, but to do the initial technology is not the biggest challenge. And of course, huge benefits if this is done well. So just in manufacturing alone, there are estimates that of the $14 trillion to be saved till 2022, 27% of this will happen in manufacturing. So the amounts are simply mind-boggling. Have you ever thought about who would get this money, the savings? I mean, will it flow back to society or will it go back into us as shareholders? Is another question just to ponder. So the Internet of Things will have a lot of benefit. and hopefully will make shareholders and then pensioners benefit from it. So that's the one, right? So this is the business as usual. I think the one that's probably as interesting, if not more, is the way, how do we use technology for the improvement of the lots of our society, for people. So if we start with the sustainable agenda of the United Nations, you probably know this, ranging from poverty all the way to peace, justice, etc. That's a fact. 2030, certain goals. Now we have disruptive technology as key enablers. The question, though, is how do we combine the two? How do we merge technologies with role players and stakeholders to achieve the goals? Because you can take any one of them, whether it's environmental protection or it's climate action, there's always an interface. Technology has a role to play. Mind you, without technology, there's probably no way that we can ever get to sort of less than 2 degrees. Technology is the solution, there's no doubt. The question is how. So what I want to show you in the next couple of slides is just a preview of how technologies would need to be merged together in order for these goals to be achieved. So let's start with the first one. 3D printing, then advanced materials recycling means, and CSIR is involved in that in terms of plastic, renewable energy, blockchain. We have a digital platform, water purification, urban farming, mixed reality learning, artificial intelligence, new age, commerce, robotics, and drones. Just a few, and of course there are many others. So what the possibilities are in terms of technologies are just mind-blowing, because we have now, with 4.0, a possibility to create a decentralized, dispersed, and peer-to-peer value creation. What does that mean? It means peer-to-peer, you don't have to have a large multinational organization necessarily to integrate with another party to add value. It's just revolutionary in that sense. Combining environmental protection with holistic economic beneficiation, increased access to economy through the disruptive technologies, reduction of waste and pollution of supply chains, globalization. My most popular mantra is always, why don't we tax CO2 in terms of transport? So if we have this thing going from South Africa, cotton, to China, coming back, if we were to tax the transport, we would change the world overnight, because this would be unaffordable, wouldn't it? Okay. So it really is a question of how do we change legislation to drive behavior and localization and other things. And of course, the more equitable distribution of income, broader capitalism, right? Why can I not have something where I generate wealth by having, for example, a solar panel on my roof and selling power at a small base? Why? Why do I need to have a big capitalist system to do so? So it's the broadening of capitalism, not the replacement, which is the issue. And then the conversion of technology-enabled savings for societal benefits. Where will all these trillions of dollars that we are going to save through IoT, how will they flow back into society? Will they only mean that those who already have capital will get richer, or will those benefits somehow be accrued back to society is the question. Okay. So I want to take you through 3 quick case studies. How are we on time? Still? 3 minutes, okay. Oh my gosh, okay. So localized, no, that's not true. That's not true. No, I have another 10 minutes. No. No. Okay, so localized 3D printing. No. Okay, so first of all, let's just take this first example, which is localized 3D printing. So what happens at the moment? I think you go to Mr. Price and you buy a plastic dustbin. Right, fantastic. All the way from China. Okay. I mean, can you imagine a plastic dustbin from China? Right. So now you have this ship, and let's assume the plastics were to come from here, we ship it to China, we ship it back. And now, the notion is, why don't we have a 3D printing hub across South Africa, where the production itself happens with a 3D printer, because all you need is the design, you need the machine. You don't need to physically send the item there. So what you'd have here is you'd have 3D printing, Internet of Things, advanced materials, and possibly recycling. You'd establish a network of 3D printing hubs for local production. It would be an alternative to export raw materials and import finished goods, maximize local value add, job retention, collective access and usage of equipment, and printing files for shared benefits, and the linkage to recycling of existing materials. Right? So there's this principle of the zero margin cost society, and the question is, how much will that file cost for you to print the 3D, that dustbin is the issue. And there's clearly a notion which says that file will probably cost nothing. So ultimately, or next to nothing, that dustbin can become relatively cheap. It's probably just a function of the material and the equipment, which is spread across different costs. So just the first example. And by the way, that would challenge a lot of the things that we consider as the holy grail of globalization. The next one is distributed energy system, which is where we're looking at decentral production, we're looking at distribution network and peer-to-peer. Now, you know the classic notion is one we need to have big power plants of 100 billion rand or more, and ultimately the user is the user of energy. He must just use whatever he gets, thank you. And of course, a new notion is of a super smart grid, where you are both a consumer as well as a producer of energy. Now here we would have renewable energy, energy storage, new age commerce, blockchain. And how this would work is you'd fundamentally rethink the possibilities of energy production, where the utility is a network maintenance, power gap closure, and coordination company. And energy user and supply becomes a generator and a seller of power. Right. Totally different. 100 billion rands, as opposed to going to 80 plus 20, you know where the 20 goes, right? So let's assume that, so you rather take the 100 million and then spread them across certain companies. And microloans would be a key thing, basically, for people to be able to fund the energy for themselves, right? To buy the solar panel. Almost done. So waste reduction is another one, where essentially you have the classical waste reduction model, and now the issue is, how can you create a public service delivery where everything's integrated in terms of IoT? So here you'd have blockchain, mixed reality, drones, digital platform, and you'd apply the industry or IoT principles in terms of improving certain things. Now, smart city is well known, but smart city, I think, is a first world concept. It does not necessarily apply here. There are certain reality. People stay in a shack, it's not a smart city. So you need to apply these things to the South African aspect, and also deal with AI and other aspects in order to be able to improve the services. And I think very much the key thing is the savings that are generated would need to be plowed back to society. The last one is about water. We currently have a food value chain and a sanitation value chain, and I think what's going to happen in future is that the use of available urban space, pesticide-free new energy farming, and water recycling harvesting are going to merge. So you'll probably have, vertical and at-demand farming. You'll have water harvesting and application reusage and complex compound breakdown. So before the plastic goes into the ocean, and as you know, by 2040 there'll be more plastic than fish in the sea. Why don't we break them down before they go there? Here you'd need urban farming, water purification, advanced materials, new age funding in order to reduce the logistics intensive farming, change that to urban, have a new supply-buy relationship to support new business, which is of course done by some of the new funding models, creation of a marketplace for collection and selling of fresh water, that's probably going to happen, especially in the Cape, and then the plastic breakdown and all these elements that are going to occur. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are at the point where our society will change massively, probably. And the question is, what is the game plan of South Africa in terms of the process to follow, the parties required, the commercial model, and the role of strategy and innovation plays in making this happen? Now, what is the problem statement? The problem statement is that technology does not always arrive when you want it to, right? If solar was ready, we would do all of this tomorrow. But some of it's not quite ready. So it's about timing. So what I'm proposing is that in terms of the developments, especially in the South African context, we probably need a game plan that it consists of three elements. We have to look at the opportunities for South Africa, where technology could be used in terms of beneficiation for society. There are emerging technologies. And then, of course, there's the technology adoption. Now, technology adoption is not just a function of technology, as Hans was saying. There's lots of other things, change management involved, etc. And the problem comes in when these are not aligned, you will not have successful implementation of all these new beneficial technologies. So what probably is required, this is not a promise, this is the last one, is that these parties, including the CSIR and others, develop a process whereby they are able to integrate these three concepts all in one, which is strategize and assess the potential for new age industrial development, as I explained, in terms of those examples, establish and monitor multi-factor gap to realization, And the gap may be technological in certain cases, it may be policy, right? For example, in power, there is this policy which favors certain parties over others. Research, test, and industrialize solutions to close the gaps, integrate the solution, and test those in real-life environment, and build a governance model and implement. That's, in essence, it. And I think if we do not do this, unfortunately, all the benefits of these fantastic technologies will not necessarily be released as quickly as they can. And I think from a South African growth development point of view, the CSIR and others have phenomenal technologies, as we all saw today, I think.